Namaskar viewers, I Dr. Renu Tomar welcome you back on the lectures on series of discussion on NEP 2020. Friends, if you recall my last lecture on NEP 2020, we were discussing part 1 of NEP 2020, which is school education. Friends, we discussed few points of school education. Just to recall, we have discussed early childhood care and education, how it is to be seen from the perspective of NEP 2020 while having NEP 2020 being used or being implemented by various stakeholders. We also discussed that how foundational literacy and numeracy, which is an urgent and necessary prerequisite to learning. This is a statement I am reading from NEP 2020 only, because this is how they have read it, that foundational literacy and numeracy is an urgent need, and it has been extended to 18 years of age until class 12. This also we have discussed, elaborated upon in detail. We also discussed how NEP 2020 has elaborated upon curtailing dropout rates and ensuring universal access to education at all levels. This was a prime factor which was looked by NEP 2020, in which it has been found by the educationists who are involved in NEP 2020 that the dropout rate is higher when it comes to middle section of the school and higher secondary and secondary section of the school. So, there we need to make special efforts for curtailing dropout rates and to ensure universal access to education. And because RTE, right to education, has been extended to 18 years of age until class 12, so it becomes very important that the dropout rate in the middle sections and the higher secondary section is also looked at very seriously by the implementers. That is why NEP 2020 has touched this particular feature in great detail. Friends, this also we have discussed in our last lecture. We had also begun discussing curriculum and pedagogy in school, how learning has to be made holistic, integrated, enjoyable and engaging. This was the point which we were discussing in our last lecture. We will be carrying on this particular point, the curriculum and pedagogy, where we had left it. Friends, if you remember, when we discussed about curriculum and pedagogy, the main point was that structuralization of school has been changed in NEP 2020 because a new design has been introduced, which is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, and this consists of two parts. Foundational part, that is the 5-year foundational stage, has also been divided in NEP 2020 in two parts. 3 years of Anganwadi, that is preschool, and 2 years in primary school in grades 1 and 2. So, both together covers age group of 3 to 8 and classes pre-primary 2, Anganwadi 2, class 5. The second base of curriculum design, the pedagogy design, which has been introduced in NEP 2020 is to prepare students for preparatory stage, that is grades 3 to 5, which covers age 8 to 11. So, this is the preparatory stage as introduced by NEP 2020. Then there is a middle stage which covers grades 6 to 8 and age group which is touched upon is 11 to 14. Then there is secondary stage which is grades 9 to 12 in two phases, that is 9 and 10 in the first phase, which is higher secondary level, then 11 and 12 in the second phase, which covers age 14 to 18. So, this is the secondary stage consisting of two compartment or two phases. And of course, the preparatory stage has been asked to compromise. It compromises of 3 years of education, building on play, discovery and activity based. This means that during the preparatory stage, which is of 3 years of education, the pedagogy will be play, discover and activity based. So, the memorization of concept, memorization of questions and answers will not be at the center when it comes to preparatory stage. In fact, NEP 2020 has seen education from the perspective of introducing learning in the life of students in such a manner that they are able to utilize that learning. Foundational stage is also to incorporate light textbooks only and aspects of more formal but interactive classroom learning is introduced at the foundational stage. And what is at the center? At the center of foundational stage as well as the preparatory stage. At the center of both preparatory stage and the foundational stage is holistic development, that is cognitive development and building character as per the 21st century requirement, that is incorporating in the education system building the pedagogy in such a manner that the 21st century skills can be introduced, character can be built, the moral aspect of the education needs to be strengthened and the holistic development is to be introduced. Secondary stage, which is of 4 years, that is 9, 10, 11, 12, shall be multidisciplinary. What does it mean? Multidisciplinary means that the subject orientation we presently in the education system, what we have is from the very beginning a demarking line. The various streams are demarked. The art, humanities is different from the science, science is seen different from the commerce. This particular demarcation in NEP 2020 is to be get away from. What has been introduced by the educationist in NEP 2020 is that there shouldn't be any kind of a demarcation as far as subject orientation is concerned. That means the interest of the student should be at the center when it comes to pedagogical development or the curricular style. Multidisciplinary approach, which we usually introduce at the PG level, postgraduate level, that should be introduced at the secondary stage, and that too with greater depth, because they have recognized that the greater critical thinking and life aspirations are to be built as a part of character of the students, particularly at the secondary stage. That is why it is very important that the flexibility is introduced and the choice of subject is left to the student. If the student is interested in music, that does not mean that the student can't go for science subjects. The student can go for dance along with studying physics, maths along with studying art education. So, this kind of flexibility is to be provided by the implementers for NEP 2020. NEP 2020 has basically centered its approach on reducing curriculum content. That is very important to enhance essential learning and critical thinking, because it is seen that the bags of the students is very heavy. The similar kind of the approach was there of the Yashpal committee also. We have discussed NCF also in great detail, friends, if you remember. There also we discussed that Yashpal committee was particularly disturbed about the burden on students, the burden of school bags on students. So, the similar kind of approach is seen in the amongst the academicians who have developed NEP 2020, that the curriculum content has to be of importance and it should be based upon essential learning skill and critical thinking. Curriculum should not be there just because we think it should be there, but it should be of importance to the student. It should be able to inculcate thinking in the student in such a manner that the student can apply those learning in day-to-day life as well as in his professional life. That is why NEP 2020 has specifically emphasized on experiential learning, that is experience and then learn, hand-on learning experiences. It has also recommended that the education should have its pedagogy reframed in such a manner that it is art integrated, sports integrated and storytelling based. That means the pedagogy should be so liberal that we should be teaching students with the help of art. We should be teaching students through playing. We should be enhancing the learning amongst the students through storytelling. This kind of pedagogy is need to be developed as far as NEP 2020 is concerned. It has talked about closing the gaps in achievement of learning outcome and classroom transaction, because what is expected is after implementation of NEP 2020 is that the classroom transaction shall shift towards competency based learning and education, because what is happening presently is that there is a lot of transaction in the class. Learning is more or less decided by the teacher based upon the fact that how far the student is able to memorize the things which teacher either states in the class or provide the students in form of notes. So, that is the basics to education system presently. This kind of transaction is to be left out. The shifting of attitude of the teachers is very important for enhancing learning amongst the class, for enhancing competency based learning amongst the students. This need to be introduced by shifting the perspective of teachers from the classroom transaction to student centered learning. That is why they have emphasized upon multilingualism, because it has been accepted that the child till he is 6-year-old, he or she is much more comfortable in his or her mother tongue. And this is also very much probable and possible, and also it is a fact of life that when a child is staying in some society, that language is also picked up by the child quite easily. That is why usually we find that the English communication learning is poor amongst the student, because that is not the language which is natural language, the first language to the child. It is usually taught as a second language. So, that is why NEP 2020 has emphasized on multilingualism. It has emphasized on improving the power of language. It has emphasized that the teacher in class should also be using bilingual approach, and bilingual teaching learning should be motivated. Such kind of material should be developed. That means a concept which is being explained in English, that concept should also be explained in Hindi, in Malayalam, in Tamil and in other languages also in which the student is comfortable. All the basic languages which are spoken by children at their home, that should be at the center of education. Multilingualism has always led to more cognitive benefit to the young student. This point should be remembered by the academicians for improving and enhancing learning amongst the student. So, this particular NEP 2020 is working towards empowering students by improving and increasing flexibility in the course choices. This is something we have discussed, and there shouldn't be any kind of a hard separation amongst the curricular, extracurricular and co-curricular. Friends, there are two things. One, that there shouldn't be any kind of a hard separation between the streams, that is science streams, humanities stream and commerce stream. Similarly, there should be no hard separation between curricular, extracurricular, co-curricular activities also, because they should also be accepted as medium of learning, so that the students can enjoy learning in the classes as well as outside the classes. And another important aspect which has been touched is that vocational and academic stream should not be seen as different perspectives. They should be gelling at a place, they should be merging at a place, so that the child who is pursuing academic stream in particular subject, may it be of the English, Hindi or chemistry or physics, simultaneously the child may also be allowed to pursue some vocational part of the education. He can learn computer science, he can learn carpentry, he can learn other art or craft in which he or she is interested, or the family has an orientation, so that when the child passes out of the school after being 18 years, the child should be able to utilize that learning in working day to day life, in earning bread. So, this is at the center of NEP 2020. 3 language formula will remain. Friend, this is something we discussed in our last lecture also, that 3 language formula will continue to be implemented. But along with that, multilingualism approach will also be added. And for class pre-nursery and the foundational aspects, the fun project activity should be introduced, and even for the grades 6 to 8, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat initiative is to be introduced through projects, through activity, through bringing students together despite the diverse feature they might be following, not only in their community at home but also in school, because this has been propagated by NEP 2020 that the diverse features which are part of the life of the child should be incorporated by the education system in the school system. That is why they have talked about multilingualism and introducing vocational education. So, when that will be introduced, the different regional information, religion information, the languages, if they are to be incorporated, then there need to be a unifying feature also. For unifying, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat initiative is to be introduced by the school education implementers based upon fun projects and activities. And this is something which is to be introduced from class 6 to class 8. Another important aspect which NEP 2020 has introduced and which has been emphasized again and again by educationists, importance of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is to be seen not as a classical language, it is a modern language, as it is mentioned in 8th schedule of the Constitution of India. And in fact, even the computer experts, those who understand the software skills, even they have accepted that the Sanskrit is the best language for introducing computing skills. So, Sanskrit is a language which should be accepted and which should be acknowledged as playing an important role, not only just introducing the classical as well as the old traditional knowledge, but also it can be used in a modern way as to introduce the 21st century skill, that is computing skill. Apart from Sanskrit, the emphasis also has been on other classical languages: Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, Odia, Pali, Persian and Prakrit. These language has also been emphasized by NEP 2020, and for improving upon these languages, it has been stated again and again that the literature which exists in these languages need to be introduced to the students who are speaking this language. Similarly, the students as well as the teachers should be motivated to produce more teaching learning material, so that the students are able to benefit more from these languages also, and these languages also enriches itself. And this is the way which has been introduced. How these languages are to be taught? They have to be taught by innovative and experiential methods. That is, they should be experiencing them. How that they can experience? By gamification, even by introducing apps. That means the apps, most of the apps are working in English only. We shall be introducing more apps in these classical languages that will provide the strength to the students who are conversant in that language, and the classical literature which has been overlooked for centuries, that would also find its rightful place in the education system. So, critical aspects of the different languages, the cultural aspects of these different languages are to be introduced through films, theatre, storytelling, poetry, music, experiencing, as well as other innovative methods which can be introduced through apps and of course through playing games. Curricular integration of essential subjects is also something which has been referred in NEP 2020. In curricular integration of essential subjects, skills and capacities, they have talked about introducing contemporary subjects such as AI, artificial intelligence, designing, thinking, health, organic living, environmental education and global citizenship education. These are the skills and capacities which are required for building not just the character but also 21st century skill amongst our students. So, these need to be introduced in schools by making them part of the pedagogy. So, the curricular integration of these subjects is seen as essential. Knowledge of India. What will knowledge of India as per the framers of NEP 2020? Knowledge of India includes knowledge from ancient India and its contribution to modern India. That means Panchtantra, which is not only important from the perspective of moral education, but it is also important from the perspective that it teaches what is wisdom and how our old people in ancient India sees wisdom, so that our students understand the value of different aspects and they bring it into their life. Only then they would be understanding challenges of life, adjusting as far as those challenges is concerned, will be able to accommodate successes and failure in their life. Because friends, this is an important thing which all of us are concerned about, that the generations are to be strengthened from the point of view of social psychological understanding as well as moral education, because it is being seen that the students who are very good academically, they are also not able to bear even the light burden of failures, and that results in increase in suicidal rate. So, the answer to strengthening the morality of the student, strengthening the character of the student, providing them the strength in the form of education is to take them back to knowledge of India, because there lies all the answers to the queries, all the answers to our problems, but they are to be introduced to our children. So, doing what is right is need to be understood from the logical framework for making ethical decisions, and because ethical decisions are to be taught, how to make ethical decision is to be taught. The best way is the storytelling, gamification and other aspects, the pedagogical aspect of education, that is learning with fun. That is the best way to teach children. It has been seen as a consequences of ethical reasoning, the traditional Indian values will enhance, and all basic human and constitutional values such as seva, ahimsa, swachhta, satya, nishkam, karma, shanti, sacrifice, tolerance, diversity, pluralism, righteous conduct, gender sensitivity, respect for elders and respect for all people would be introduced. Because if ethical reasoning is built in a child, so all traditional values and constitutional values can easily be built in the children, and that is very important for developing inherent capacities regardless of background, and they also need to be taught how to respect the environment. The children also need to be taught how to be helpful, courteous, patient and forgiving and empathetic. in their day to day life. They should be responsible. Justice, liberty, equality and fraternity, which is part of our constitution, that needs to be developed in all studies, not just in the social sciences, but also in humanities, also in sciences, so that children understand that how the knowledge which they are getting in the school is to be utilized for these capabilities, for these capacities, because they are inherent part of Constitution of India as well as cultural aspects of India. For developing pedagogy, National Curriculum Framework for School Education NCFSE has been developed. In NEP 2020, they have stated that a new and comprehensive National Curricular Framework for School Education NCFE 2021 shall be developed by NCERT. It needs to be undertaken by NCERT for developing the same. Friends, we will continue discussing this particular aspect of school education of NEP 2020 in our next lecture. I take your leave for the time being. Namaskar.